Video games are an incredibly diverse form of entertainment, something that I assume everyone watching has played in some form or another. There's a genre for everybody, whether you've got a strong creative drive or an ignited competitive soul, whether you're like playing on your own or with your best friends, you can find a surplus of games to fill your library with. However, I think it's safe to say that reading up on wretched releases or shitty companies on the brink of liquidation, or witnessing record-breaking failures, all of that has become a new form of video game entertainment. AAA studios can't seem to take a hint that most of their games are complete and utter dog shit, watered down versions of what they once were, and usually designed to make sure that not a single living soul can even try and enjoy whatever polished turd of a game they've released. On the contrary, multiple smaller games have managed to outsell and outperform many of these bigger games. Indie game hits have been on the rise in recent years, and due to quadruple A studios biting the curb, it seems the market is becoming significantly more favorable for indie games. Or just good games in general. I bring forth all of this to you because I truly believe we are on the verge of a huge shift in gaming. We've seen large-scale studios sink millions into major disappointments, and tiny teams develop absolute masterpieces of our time. You don't even need to look that far back in time, and we can easily see some of the best gaming hits, as well as the absolute catastrophically worst. Now, I have to give a disclaimer. I have not played nor kept up on all of these games I'm about to list in this video, so if anything seems out of date or not 100% in line or whatever, that's probably why. I'm about to cover a wide variety of games. Many popular titles you'll probably recognize, so I may not even cover all of whatever drama or complaints or rancid business tactics have unfolded under each title. If I've gotten something wrong, missed a key detail, or if I'm right on the money, please let me know in the comments. Additionally, just writing the script took a lot of time to fully flesh out, revise, and organize, and holy shit, 2025 has already had lots of updates from companies, certain games, etc. So if any of these other points seem out of date from news from some other company or game, I'm sorry. Again, this script took a long time to edit, make, revise, and then also just edit the video itself. I can't control how fast these companies crash and burn. Now that that's out of the way, the majority of this is an accumulation of some of the worst games and trends we've seen over the past few years. I've tried to keep it organized by having a sequence of games under their respective company before moving on to the next one. Now, surely there are more games to complain about under each company, but some companies have fallen much farther than others, and some games have literally broken the lowest records. Corporate greed has become priority number one in the majority of games we've seen nowadays, and many beloved titles have been tainted by very predatory or simply lousy business tactics. Of course, I understand the people who complain are obviously way louder and gain way more traction. Unless their critics and their skewed opinions get pushed, which I don't know why you'd be listening to game critics anyways. However, a lot of these complaints have been completely valid, since we have seen reoccurring greedy trends, overpriced garbage, and lackluster games that are made to be pushed out and gather whatever money people are willing to fork over. Starting off a little short with Microsoft. I know there's probably a lot more that's happened under them, but I've got a lot more to go over, and other companies I can tell you have done a lot more from what I've seen under Microsoft recently. But I promise, this bit of build-up under Microsoft will help a bit with what's next. Halo, for example, is an incredible franchise with engaging lore and the ever-so-popular character, John Halo. Unfortunately, it is owned by Microsoft, and the release of Halo Infinite fell far from the best installments of the Halo franchise. Plus, just to add salt to the wound, Microsoft goes and declines the Doom and Halo crossover for Secret Level. While that's slightly off topic, it's still worth noting just how unfun Microsoft likes to be. Secret Level is getting a Season 2, so I really hope Microsoft takes their Wednesday pills and wakes up to the golden idea of what this could be, and maybe that will fill in a slot so we don't get a spot wasted for something like Concord. Don't worry, we'll revisit the apocalyptic car crash later. We know Microsoft isn't exactly everyone's favorite corporation in the gaming region, and it tends to leave a nasty stench on anything that says it's been developed under them. Another notorious example is Minecraft Bedrock Edition, the second variation of Minecraft after Microsoft bought Mojang. The amount of microtransactions in that version is putrid, and this is why Minecraft Java Edition is simply the best version of Minecraft, where we actually get a functioning version of the game, along with unlimited access to mods, maps, and other fantastic extensions. We don't have to pay for any of these ridiculous DLCs or cosmetics, and instead get teased on a Hello Kitty collab instead of a new update. Oh, children are getting addicted to gambling on both versions. Hi, me again. Because who else would it be? I know it's already very early on in the video, and I'm very inconsistent with recording things and doing things. So, in case you couldn't tell by the difference in the hair length, I think it gives you enough of an understanding of how long it's been since I actually last sat down and started doing some of this. Or stood up. Even while writing the script, a lot goes on with each and every company that makes games, especially the ones that I have featured in this script. So I guess for a lot of this, I'm going to be going off script a bit, because if I were to try to rewrite this script every single time something happened with EA or Ubisoft or Microsoft or literally anything else, this would never get done. So I'm just going to try to whip up whatever I can. Try to be entertaining while doing it, because there's only so much I can do, really. So if there's an update to anything that I've listed in my script, I'll make sure to try to include that here and there and make it seem nice. But yeah, I got a lot to go through, and too much happens for me to really be completely consistent either anyways. So I don't talk well. Now that we're back on track, as I was mentioning earlier, Minecraft. I really hate to put this on this side of the fence, but, you know, Mojang's not an exception from the bad shit that goes on either. And, to my knowledge, there is a lawsuit against them. Okay, yeah, by the looks of it, yeah, lawsuit for violating Europe's EULA, E-U-L-A. Something user license agreement. Basically, Mojang and their higher-ups or whatever being cruddy, crappy to people about certain things. Yeah, lawsuit. Go watch Key and Bros' video on this, because he's the one behind it. And for good reason, too, as we'll see in a second. Essentially, Kian and a team of his were behind the creation of a server revolving around guns and all that was supposed to be a reflection of an old server he really liked to play on, in which they made substantial progress and were this close to releasing it to the public. But a small little hurdle appeared in their track, formerly known as Mojang's TOS team, and threatened a slightly similar server because of the use of guns and firearms in said server, saying that they violated Mojang's terms of service. So while it was not directly targeted against Kian and his server, his team, as well as many other servers, were very panicked because now none of their hard work was safe from what Mojang's team were trying to accomplish here, which was complete and utter shutdown. And obviously, of course, I get it. You don't want very young children interacting and experiencing guns and stuff like that, things that they don't really fully understand the gist of, yeah, you shoot somebody and they die and they're not coming back. There's no respawn mechanic in real life. But if we go ahead and take a look at just plain old regular Minecraft without the use of any sort of texture packs or mods or anything, you can see that there's also just straight up literal firearms and weapons and other unethical acts, which again is also important to note that Mojang essentially encourages such acts, like mob farming and the use of various different weapons and such. Basically, Mojang plays the role of a hypocritical asshole, ignoring arguments and valid questions from the people who are being targeted in this, most likely due to press reasons, but that's besides the point. And they also go around and try to update the EULA behind everyone's backs to line up with what they now want, which is also illegal, and they can't do that. The only problem with that, other than it being illegal, is this is the internet. You're not safe on the internet. We all know. Everyone knows. But that's just one half of it. The other half, as I mentioned earlier, is the gambling. The best thing in the world that everyone enjoys doing with their car keys in one hand and a Jack Daniels in the other. No, but on a real note, gambling is also one of those things that Mojang isn't a fan of, according to their EULA. And after doing some very thought-out research, according to these two videos here as my sources, it's absurd for Mojang to go after one specific feature on their big old list of no-nos, one that is featured within their own base game, of course, to a certain degree, rather than an even bigger, more dangerous, and extremely harmful feature, one that people are actually profiting off of. Kian pointed out in his lawsuit video on the fact that many popular servers have a sort of crate and key feature, pretty similar to CSGO, I guess. You purchase crates and keys and stuff, or you get crates and you purchase keys, or however their system works. Essentially gambling, where you buy one thing and then open a crate, which is literally just a jazzed out slot machine, in the hopes of getting something super advanced or high level, or just puts you way above the rest. And in Hellcastle and Tyler's video, they go ahead and look at all these very popular servers that Mojang actually has on their official server list, which, lo and behold, actually features and promotes many of these servers that have this crate and key system in it. So basically, Mojang themselves is allowing servers to be promoted by them that also go ahead and promote their crate and key. It's gambling. It's gambling. They're promoting gambling. Now, I know some of you may think that it's not exactly Mojang's sole responsibility to micromanage each and every server that they have listed, but there's literally no justifying the fact that they will go and try to shut down servers for promoting guns and stuff because that violates their EULA, but then they go ahead and promote all these other servers that promote gambling, which is also directly against their EULA. So they're just picking and choosing because in several instances, there are actually ways that Mojang can profit off of this crate and key system from the servers that they promote themselves. So there's no really good way to put them in the good light. So that was more on Mojang because, again, it's justified and not actually Minecraft itself. I don't want to do that too much because I kind of already did in here. Not really shitting on it, more actually giving criticism and thoughts and opinions about stuff, like how they're currently updating their game and such. But they have so much potential. There's a lot of potential that they can do. And I know they're slowly working their way back, kind of after the dark ages of stuff. Again, I talk about what that really dark age is in right over here. You should watch that too. There's a lot they can do with their #1 best-selling game of the world, and I think I speak for everybody when we want to see what they can really do with stuff. Now, I know they can't put all of their time and effort and people into just Minecraft. Like, they got more they got to do and more to make because, I mean, really, if you think about it, like, I would love to have some cool other Minecraft things going on. The movie is one thing. But, you know, they got a Netflix series in the works, which I'm hoping is really good and turns out more kind of like what we wanted the movie to be. Grammar. But at the same time, their spin-offs have been decent. We had Dungeons, which was cut short, and again, shows how much potential they have and what they could add over to base Minecraft. And then Legends, which didn't even last a year. Now we have another leaked spin-off that's supposed to be coming in 2026 or so that I'm really, really hoping is something super fun, super cool, actually lasts, and, you know, can inspire things to be put into the main game and not like, you know, showing some features that, hey, we'll think about adding some of this to the base game. Here, you could choose to vote on this, and then, oh, it lost? Oh, hey, we'll add it, maybe. I don't know. Regardless, both these spin-offs have incredible potential for what they can do for Minecraft. I think the Minecraft movie also counts towards that, seeing just the trailers themselves. Like, there's potential of concepts and stuff, like, what if the piglins do more? What if there's, like, a piglin leader? What if there are piglin wizards? That would be awesome! We got a piglin witch fighting a normal witch? Like, that's great! And, you know, hopefully such potential isn't snuffed out by things like, I don't know, lore, or the timeline of the game, or not lining up with the developers' views. But there's, like, very, very little crossover between... Okay. There's very little crossing over from the DLCs into the base game. Yeah, they're Minecraft spin-off, so obviously you're going to see a lot of regular Minecraft stuff in the game, but having some of that spin-off stuff transferred to the base game, we almost did. The Isolager was a thing. Moobloom was not from a does the mobile app count as a spin-off? Let's say yes, it does. We had the Moobloom. Well, no, we got the Glow Squid, and now the other two are like, hey, we'll add that eventually, maybe. We'll think about it. Yes, I voted for the Glow Squid. No, not because Dream was all like, you should vote for this. I genuinely thought that it would be a really cool thing, and it would light up waters, and it doesn't. And the limited use of the glowing sex and just the creature in general has made me incredibly disappointed with my decision, and I am sorry. But anyways, back to other actual legitimate criticisms and stuff, and not just like, oh, I wish this would happen, blah, blah, blah. Minecraft has two versions, right? Java and Bedrock. Again, I went over a little bit of the difficulties of managing both. In this video, go watch it, go do it! Complete parity is not going to happen between the two. Mojang has stated that, and they better not go back on their word on that, because things like Redstone do not work the same way between the two versions. And if they were to try to flip one version to the other, people with worlds and contraptions that revolved around that versions of Redstone will no longer work. The problem with this is that they go about it the wrong way. This point that I'm about to bring up was immediately reverted the next snapshot after, but the fact that they were even attempting that just is a bummer. Java had a slightly faster diagonal movement, I think it was, so strafing, which Bedrock did not. So what was Mojang's response to this? Instead of quite literally bringing Bedrock up to speed, they go ahead and nerf the Java speed, which, seeing how you can be literally blown up like that from behind you, or just the absolute atrocity that is this Minecraft skeletons and their aimbot nature and stuff, I fail to see why a slower base speed would be better in any scenario for Minecraft. It simply doesn't make sense either, because if you're looking at it that way, there's two outcomes. One, where one version is unchanged and they feel nothing, and the other version is happy because, hey, we got a slight movement buff. That's cool. Or the other way, which they attempted to go, was this side feels nothing, and this side is sad because they're slightly slower now, and things like generic movement as well as parkour maps as a whole are now thrown out the window because the old system is now gone. That was the route they almost took, which again, it was immediately reverted, and they're still looking into it, I guess, as to what they'll actually do in the long run. The other example, I think, was something to do with like the entity size and like, I think horses and whatever not being able to fit in boats anymore on Bedrock or whatever. So, again, just generic nerfs to the game. That. Do you guys approve? I don't think they do. I don't think anyone really approves. I don't know why. Why would we nerf things that aren't, like, game-breaking? They just help a player in this state, especially when horses in the game suck. That's why we kill them with maces, because it's funny. All I can say in the end with this is that I pray they look at some of these and start thinking of the player's benefit. Make it better. Don't make it worse. It's pretty simple. That's really all you got to do. Moving on to the spin-offs, and with one I actually found very fun and played a lot, is Minecraft Dungeons. It was entertaining, offered some replayability, and was the first nice, interesting spin to Minecraft itself with a very unique looking game, at least to my experience. However, for many people, the base game became very dry, especially considering how the higher level progression was just replaying older levels at a higher difficulty to get the same items at higher levels. And unfortunately, at best, the majority, which I think it was all of the updates that this game received, were a surplus of DLCs and a few in-game battle passes. Although I will say that after the release of all the DLCs, the $40 price tag is indeed worth it, given each DLC adds several new levels and themes and weapons and items and such. And going back to the potential that this game has for the base game of Minecraft, it contains a slew of mobs, items, blocks, and just atmospheric additions that they could easily migrate over to the base game. But again, probably will not see the light of day anytime soon, if ever. One of my favorites are the little yellow glowy mushrooms that illuminate surroundings and give a little hum sound when you walk over them. I would absolutely adore to see those added to Minecraft, but my only reason as to why simple, small things like that haven't been added to Minecraft is just because they need some sort of use, quote unquote. And I'm not trying to say that it's just a simple cakewalk to go ahead and pluck things from dungeons and put it into Minecraft. But if we were to, at the very least, look at a lot of the new additions that base Minecraft have added, we can clearly see that there's been a very strong improvement of features added. Blocks and items now do more unique things. The creatures themselves have become more diverse with much more fluid and unique animations and features and stuff. And they're only getting better and better as time goes on. So clearly there is a lot of potential. And with time, the ability to add some of these super cool, fun things. Now, looking at the other spin-off, Minecraft Legends, like I said earlier, it had a very quick discontinuation, lasting, I believe, only like 9-10 months or so, if even. And shockingly, isn't even close to the quickest discontinuation of a game that we'll be seeing in this video. The most that I saw from people talking about it was that it was just extremely lackluster, and it didn't really feature as much replayability as they kind of advertised it to have. Like Dungeons, Legends had a $40 price tag, and unlike Dungeons, had Legends lasted long enough to receive more updates or 6+ DLCs and other content drops, then maybe that price tag would have been worth it. But I really don't even know if this game is worth your time to begin with. Even going through Steam reviews, it was hard to find a lot of good reviews that highlighted why the game itself was good. And even if there was a positive review, and they didn't really go into that much depth, they would often mention the $40 price tag and the microtransactions within the game. Because, of course, a game you already paid $40 for needs to milk more out of your wallet. And again, disclaimer, this is another one of those games that I haven't actually played myself, and I've also seen very sparse footage of the actual gameplay. But I can still only sit in slight disappointment seeing how the setting in the thumbnail looks like this, and then the gameplay turns out to be this. Of course, it is completely fine if this is your genre, and this is just absolutely your cup of tea. But many people who were also fans of this genre of game were just not fans of Minecraft Legends either. So, do what you will, enjoy what you like. If this game was a hit for you, more power to you. Hey, me intruding again. So I completely forgot that on the day that I was recording all of this session, at least, that Mojang released their Minecraft live show and unveiled the Happy Ghast, which isn't quite what I expected as a teaser for a new update, but honestly, I actually really like the style of it, and I think it's a super interesting, unique, and unexpected addition, so go off, Mojang. Now, oh man, this next subject, I can't actually rub my hands because I'm holding the microphone, so you just get some of that cool hand rubbing ASMR. For a joint company that is half named after a severe snowstorm, they sure have seen quite a lot of heat in recent times. Disregarding a lot of the inner turmoil that has gone on in the company before Overwatch 2, it's easy to see how money hungry that this company became. And at the expense of being super greedy, we see how garbage that their games have become. And while the reign of Bobby Cockdick, hopefully, is over, he still had a major influence over how a lot of these games sort of melded into. But even after he left, some of the games are just deplorable. Here I go again, about to tell you all that no, I have not played this game before, but we are moving on to Call of Duty now. Now, I know some of you are probably diehard fans about this franchise, or at least some of the very good games in the past, but this game IP is just the absolute realm of toxicity since the very beginning too, in the earliest Xbox days. At least until the pussification of ACTIVISION, which led to a point of absolute communication destruction. Now, no, I'm not trying to justify slinging slurs here and there throughout voice chat the entire time. What I am trying to say is that Activision and Blizzard have gone way too soft, and it is literally destroying just the core function of communication within their games. Now, I know Call of Duty is a very long-running series, and a lot of people behind the game are very passionate about the game. And I have not played Call of Duty, like, ever. But I still really see mostly negative things. If I were to put it into perspective, I'd say, like, for every one good thing I hear about Call of Duty, there's, like, 15 bad things. And even so, like, that good thing is just kind of like, yeah, this installment or this game was pretty good. Which, of course, a lot of it, I guess, is a matter of opinions. But, like, a lot of times there's also, like, valid criticisms as to why this game sucks and why this one's bad. And, like, hey, this one's pretty good, but it's also just not that good. And yes, I know. Most of these games are not going to live up to the best Black Ops, Zombies, game, age, whatever. Modern stuff is not going to live up to that. For sure. But we can still get good games here and there. Right? Now, much like the other game that I'll be touching base with soon, I'm sure a lot that went wrong with a lot of the recent Call of Duty installments was due to the influence of Bobby Hickey. However, my sense of time has been slipping away from me day by day, so maybe I'm wrong as to the timeline of what took place here, but I'm hoping that one of those is paying for hearing. You know, paying $20 extra for advanced hearing on top of this $70 price tag. I swear, if it weren't for indie companies proving to be way more successful than a lot of these AAA game titles, they would just find more and more and more ways to gouge our wallets for the silliest of things. Like, imagine that, paying $70 for the game, then something like you have to pay a recurring subscription of like $10, $15 to keep playing that game that you spent $70 for. Oof. Imagine that. And again, like I've said, a lot of these games that I touch base on, I do not have personal experience in, nor have I done a huge, deep research into all of them completely. My excuse being that I haven't gotten a full grip at making super good video essays yet and all that. My goal is to get better with each one that I make. So I'll leave it to you guys to judge if a 300 gigabyte game is worth it. I mean, that's a lot. Does anyone remember the running joke of GTA 5 being jokingly, comically large in terms of game size and such? Some of these Call of Duty games you are required to install more than 4 times that amount. Like, if you were to start installing a 300 gigabyte game on your console, I would assume that GTA 6 would release before that finishes installing. And I suppose the people that I reviewed, being coworkers and friends and stuff, who at the very least played and liked some of the games, when talking to them about it, they were like, yeah, this sucks. Like, they can't go and dedicate a good portion of their free time and most of their storage for a game that just sucks, isn't fun, poorly optimized, whatever. A lot of it comes down to opinion, and I'm being very broad considering Call of Duty releases like a title every single year or whatever. Sorry, chair. But still, you get my point. So having that huge of a game makes it near impossible for me to even like fathom how that's acceptable or even possible. I just genuinely fail to see how that's excusable unless you've got like huge maps made for 500 player lobbies or something for their battle royale. It's Warzone, right? I don't play this IP. And now I've been hinting at it. It's under the same company's name, and it's quite the champion I'm sure you've all been waiting for a rant about. Overwatch! And although they've been starting to step it the hell up since the rise of Marvel rivals, this game doesn't even deserve to be called by its sequel title, since its reputation either goes one of 2 routes when you bring it up to literally anybody. Wretched, sinful game, or Now, I'm sure most of you have seen at least one video of somebody highlighting something awful about Overwatch. Whether it to be before or after Overwatch 2's release. Most likely after, but that's besides the point. But there's an entire 10-course meal's worth of negatives we can list about Overwatch's recent activities that it just seems unfair not to give some sort of recap. Again, now that Marvel Rivals, I believe, has officially taken the throne. And for fair play, not that they really deserve any sort of fair, but I'll keep it relevant to Overwatch 2, since everything that's happened under that title is still more than enough to last an entire video segment. So without further ado, let the recap begin. Overwatch 2 finally releases and removes a large number of quality of life features, leaving everything to feel insanely bland in comparison to the original Overwatch, an example being the on fire system, only for them to bring it back and act like everyone should be proud of them for reverting more mistakes that the sequel forced upon everyone. The absolute biggest selling point of the sequel was the PvE game mode, which they continued to lie about and play up and act like they were making good progress, only for them to try to cover up and admit that development had long been abandoned at least an entire month ago in some random, quietly unannounced livestream. The thing that was updated most upon release was the item shop of all things, and the monetization became an actual greedy labyrinth that was just filled with dead ends, middle fingers, for both new and returning players alike. Even to this day, sad recolors and how the f they view this as worthy investment collaboration skins are pumped into the shop and end up costing an arm and a leg, getting to the point where the majority of people were wishing for loot boxes to return. At least at the time of this script, they had not announced the return of loot boxes, but at least now they're going back to that system. Again, before the return of loot boxes, they made yet another update to the shop, which was their version of the Valorant night market, only it may lean more towards your interests based off what heroes you play, which I guess would be sick if it weren't for the fact it's Overwatch, and also wasting incredible visuals and voice acting and an interesting character on yet another form of a shitty microtransaction. They made sure they completely killed the Overwatch League, and if I'm not mistaken, even bribed teams to leave rather than compete in their final Overwatch League whatever their competitive scene is. And returning back to the pussification of Activision and Blizzard, their banning and report system for especially voice and text chat were insanely strict. If you so much were to say shit or you may have sentenced yourself to a long and happy life in heaven because you could be banned from just those words alone. We're ignoring the fact that you're playing a shooter game where you have to kill the enemy players. Many characters swear in their voice lines or feature provocative slang on their fit. Swearing or even saying GGEZ can be along the same lines of an offensive slur, cheating, or just blatant harassment. Not only that, but I'm pretty sure your endorsement level, which they implemented on the release of Overwatch 2, influenced what forms of communication you were even allowed to access, meaning if your endorsement level was too low, you may not have been able to use voice chat or something. I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. They just try and try and try and try their absolute hardest to hammer down on toxicity by rendering the entire communication aspect of the game an actual minefield, but then decide to dive into the gooner aspect of their own game by promoting Kiriko's grippers in a skin. The game that's notorious for having such an obscene amount of they just go and decide to add even more fuel to this dumpster fire of a game. The 5v5 format proved to be one of the biggest hindrances in the game's quote-unquote development, leading them to go back to testing 6v6 a little too late, only now that the Grim Reaper is literally on their doorstep, which, again, at the very least, they're now, I'm pretty sure, officially going back to that, because why wouldn't they? Only before they actually started to test and go back to 6v6, the official Overwatch development team decided to post and accuse people who wanted 6v6 pack that they were wearing rose-tinted glasses and were stuck on nostalgia, essentially spitting on the faces of people who just wanted the game to be better. From the hearts of a lot of players and streamers alike, the new development team showed to know about just as little as the old team, maybe a little more, but the updated patch notes really didn't do them any justice. Many long-running heroes completely lost their identity due to the development team either wanting some heroes to remain 6 feet under for no known reason whatsoever, or again, are just too inept to even understand that win rate numbers aren't everything, causing overpowered characters to get buffed and struggling characters to be brought back and shot in the head via firing squad again and again and again and again and again and again and again. But again, at the very least, they're now going back to 6v6, so hopefully some of this will not remain true. Hopefully. While it took a bit to get reverted upon initial release of Overwatch 2, Kiriko was the first of several heroes to be locked behind the battle pass, and reigned as one of the top supports for far too long, and even after she's nerfed to be in tune with the rest of the support heroes, it still doesn't matter because she, along with many other support heroes, can easily outperform better than half of the DPS heroes with less than half the required effort. Sojourn was way too overpowered for far too long in the early seasons of Overwatch 2, and received far too many compensation buffs for any nerf she received to anything else, whilst poor Genji is continuously shit on by quote-unquote balances.
Hey, Sojourn's got really high win rates over here. She's doing really well right now.
That's it, I've heard enough. Nerf Genji. After the downfall of Sojourn, Widowmaker steps up and dominates lobbies as the strongest one-shot character after Sojourn and Hanzo were promptly butchered by the dev team, alongside reworking and nerfing Sombra into the dirt, the only person who could even attempt to keep Widowmaker in check, and of course the 5v5 format made it way too easy for Widow mains to get kills on squishies. Mike Ybarra's tweet over Marvel Rivals' success over Overwatch is practically an insult to the intelligence of whatever community is left in the Overwatch scene. And, of course, I'm sure there's plenty more, so if you're an ex-Overwatch player, tell me your 13th reason that made you quit the game for good. As Samito has put it, the game itself became a watered-down version of what was somehow Game of the Year. Overwatch 2 falls so far under Overwatch 1 that when you look at it this way, the entire game is essentially just Overwatch 1 f***ing half. If you're looking for a good way to ruin your game, look at what Overwatch did. If you're looking to build a good game and want to know what not to do, you can still look at Overwatch. I've played Overwatch every now and then, but I was never the most invested, but my heart aches to those who have had to sit through hell and back in this abusive relationship. I wish you all the best of luck in Marvel Rivals. Now, this one hits a bit close to home. I poured well over 350 hours into this game, and that's nothing compared to people who put 1,000 hours into the game, but 350 hours is still a lot of time to put into a game. But unfortunately, Phoenix Labs is the developer of Dauntless, and while I don't know if the most recent update to the game was more on Phoenix Labs' side or the new company's side, the damage has long been done, and there's no going back. So the most recent update to Dauntless, and I guess the final update to Dauntless, was a overhaul of some sort and a release onto Steam and such. The biggest downfall to it is that everyone's progress was wiped. Didn't really matter how much time you poured into the game because that's all gone. There's no salvaging it of any kind. Wiped, gone, kaput, bye. Which apparently Phoenix Labs was known for doing that with the game before, so that's like one piece of evidence that could favor Phoenix Labs being behind the update. But seeing how it's a Monster Hunter-like game, I really fail to see how it was all Phoenix Labs' fault for what happened. Again, imagine you have 1,000 hours in the game. That is an unexplainable amount of time poured into the game, playing, grinding, struggling, having fun at the very least, hopefully, getting all of these unique pieces of customization equipment, weapon skins, this and that, tournaments, all of this gone. Me, even at 350 hours, hearing my profile being wiped, I didn't have the willpower to even re-download the game and even think for a second, yeah, let's have a fresh start, let's get back on the saddle and keep going. Nobody's gonna waste that much time in the game and think, yeah, this was a good idea, let's start over. Oh, but if only it stopped there. If only it stopped there. You know, one of the core aspects of Monster Hunter type games being crafting. Kill a monster, get their parts, craft armor and weapons. They removed crafting. Like the biggest, most iconic core function of they removed it. They took that out of the game. But I mean, surely that's all there is. Microtransactions. Oh, there's so many microtransactions. Now, sure, it was a free-to-play game, so microtransactions were already a thing in the game, such as battle passes or little cosmetic bundles and item bundles that you could purchase. Rest in peace, my Autumn Fox sigil. I will miss you to death. But no, we are talking Overwatch levels of paywall microtransactions featuring weapons behind the paywall. Because why not? Have a dying game, want to squeeze just that last bit of air out and try to milk as much money as you can. Do this one simple trick. Take everything about the game and put a price tag on it. No longer can you craft any weapon you want with any element. You're now stuck to one of each weapon with one element designated to that weapon. And if you want to say your favorite weapon with fire and not ice because you're about to go fight this behemoth that is weak to whatever element you want, no, you have to pay. You have to pay for a weapon with the element you want. Because, yeah, So unless you empty out all of your pockets and count whatever aim linkets you have left, and however the rest of the song goes, you're basically left with an extremely watered down version of what was Dauntless. I can't say one of the words of that song. The Game Reckoning update took place December 2024, I believe it was. I think around December 20th or so. Late December. Come the following year, this year, January 2025, Phoenix Labs goes and lays off like a couple hundred people, 100 plus people of their staff, and have now announced that Dauntless will no longer be receiving updates starting May. So they're discontinuing support May 2025. It was fun. My friends and I all loved playing it when the mood struck, and it sucks knowing that we have literally nothing to go back to. All of that time we spent grinding and playing, and it's gone. So now, recently, Sony has been hitting us with a 1-2 combo of being insanely greedy and also having an insanely inflated, overachieving ego. Wanting to release and manage 12 live service games at once by 2026, whilst displaying to us how they can't even create and manage one for more than 2 weeks. You'll know what I'm talking about. It's even more ironic considering that they have a significantly longer list of canceled projects than they do active projects. So something tells me they're going to start focusing on delivering quality over quantity given what they have and what they no longer have. At least I really hope so if they know what's good as a business. And as I'm about to touch base on Helldivers 2, I think you all know that I don't really mean anything against the developers of Helldivers 2 because we all know that 99% of the work done was by Sony, except for like, I guess one of the main devs being angry at people for not complying or whatever the hell, but you know, that was beyond their control. And I've made sure to include Helldivers 2 as part of the good of games, because I can't go and put this here and say that it's a bad game, and this is one of the bad examples as to why AAA is failing, because Helldivers 2 is on the lighter side, I'd say, at the very least. And ignoring what happened with Sony and the migration and all that, Helldivers 2 can be a great example and a great stepping stone as to why we should hope to expect better games. Because again, the major wrongdoing was by Sony, because big AAA company, we want money. We don't care about the people or the devs developing the games. We just care about money and good looks because we suck. And of course, again, the dev who went off on fans should definitely get a bit of slack cut because they had to deal with all the major backlash since they're the face of the game and didn't really have control over the fact that Sony wanted people to migrate their accounts. Essentially, as my best friend Aiden would call it, a scripted loss. It's a common trope that we see time and time again, as most major companies do. The higher-ups look to fill as many of their holes as they can with fat stacks of cash from either the players or the investors, and seeing how popular Helldivers was and how it wasn't directly providing massive numbers to their charts, they try and force everyone to migrate to a play stinking account or whatever it was, which literally prohibited people in dozens of countries from playing the game because Sony's little weasel tactics were banned in said countries. But alas, amazingly so, they actually listened to the people for once, and that is how the notorious bar graph was born, the greatest image of video game unity I think we've ever seen. But hey, that was on the smaller scale of Sony's wrongdoings, considering that that's another game by a smaller company that Sony watches over and all of that garbage. The real treat, and the other game you've all been waiting for, breaking some of the lowest record numbers in almost every conceivable way to the point that I don't even think it can be surpassed. Seriously, if any company ends up managing to create a game that ends up doing worse than Concord in player count, Unknown 9. We'll revisit that one. And Golem's coming up. Just bear with me. Before reviewing the statistics of why Concord sucked, we have to see why the game itself sucked. First, the majority of the cast of characters are some of the most lackluster, bland, confusing, and just sloppy piles of garbage any fast-paced shooter could ever churn out, because unlike Marvel Rivals, and in this case Overwatch, several characters come more across like Cyberpunk 2077 NPCs rather than whatever the hell their role is supposed to actually be in the game. And also, to say that this game is a fast-paced shooter would literally get you sent into purgatory if you swore it on everything holy. I don't know if there's an actual good enough way to put it, but after watching even just the slightest amount of gameplay, you'll see just how slow, clunky, and even claustrophobic the game feels.
Oh, I don't have a shit. Holy. This might actually be the slowest movement I've ever seen in my life. It's like I'm on a treadmill. Hold on, give me 45 minutes, I'm flanking. Oh, I can't even play the okay. You have to switch characters after each round that you win.
In the worst timeline of gaming, otherwise known as the current era of gaming, where the most successful model of multiplayer shooter game is free to play along with cosmetic skins and battle passes to generate money via microtransactions, this was another game that required you to cough up an entire $40 alongside whatever dignity you had left if you thought this game would be any sort of appealing. And going off of Moist Critical's first ever video covering Concord, Concord managed to fall far shorter than both Redfall and Babylon's Fall, not even achieving 700 players in their peak player count. The only other achievement Concord gets, apart from being the biggest laughingstock in gaming history, is surpassing the Lord of the Rings Gollum game by just over 100 peak players, which was also an abysmal game ruined halfway through production, but at the very least Gollum wasn't an active live service multiplayer game, or at least didn't attempt to be. This bit's just for a little bit of extra fun here, but the internet's also giving me mixed answers on this. But holy hell, the smallest country in the world, Vatican City, ranges at less than 500 square miles and has a population somewhere around 500 to 700 people. So there's a solid chance that even the smallest country on Earth has a larger head count than the most number of people that subjected themselves to Concord at a single given time. The game itself did not even last a full 2 weeks before it was shut down. And my favorite bit, the fact that some random housefly somewhere in the world, unbeknownst to itself, managed to outlive this game. That is hysterical to me. Dog. And now, bringing in more numbers into the equation, the amount of time and money spent on this game is also beyond comical. Let's be a little generous and say the game did last a full 2 weeks. We're running the numbers at 14 days of activity over the 8 years this game was in development, which equates to about 2,920 days. Taking this insane fraction shows that this game's time alive was only 0.479% of the amount of time it was actually in development, which arguably is quite large compared to what we're about to see, given how the game's profit was negative $400 million. Now, sure, there haven't really been any exact reports on the game's full budget at the time of release, but considering it was at the very least $200 million, it's still the largest budget failure I think we will ever witness. And again, just for the fun of it, if we run the rounded numbers of 700 players purchasing this game at $40, equaling $28,000, assuming 700 people actually bought the game and Sony didn't issue full refunds, dividing that by $400 million, Sony would have only made 0.007% of the money back. 0.014% if you divide by 200 million. And that's just playing with the numbers, because they did issue full refunds, and we're left with a complete negative $200 to negative $400 million loss. Oh, Ubisoft, you reap what you sow. For a game company who insists that gamers should get used to not owning the games that we buy, I guess game companies such as yourself should get used to not having player bases that you cater to, or at least attempt to cater to. Now, of course, there were many games I've already covered that I'm sure many of you were waiting individually for, and Ubisoft, I'm sure, is that one company you guys are waiting for. But I genuinely have to lump all of their games into one section that will just be Ubisoft here, as you can see, because if I were to individually go into each and every one of these, it's going to take too long. That's a whole video by itself right there. I guess the exception will be Assassin's Creed, since it is Ubisoft's most recent installment and their last Hail Mary. And at least at the time that I'm recording this bit right here, right now, as far as I know, they haven't filed for bankruptcy yet or liquidized or anything. But is it in the very near future? Actually, apparently not. Assassin's Creed Shadows seems to be doing quite well right now. It is a pretty popular and well-liked franchise, so I guess the hate was just louder than the people who were actually anticipating the game itself, so I guess we'll just have to see if Ubisoft keeps pulling their weight or if they just start releasing flops again in 2025, because I know they can't just keep releasing multiple Assassin's Creed games and expect that to keep them afloat either. I know they're going to try to branch out, and I hope that they've learned a valuable lesson that they need to make some good quality games like Assassin's Creed to actually keep themselves up. Because if you hear anything about me saying Assassin's Creed is doing bad or isn't good or whatever, then I'd say disregard it at this point, because it's clearly doing enough right now. But for this section, I have to credit Yongya's Ubisoft's Abysmal 2024 video, because that single-handedly helped structure this entire section that we're about to go over, so thanks, buddy. But seriously, given all of 2024 and what happened with everything they released, even a bit before 2024, it was just flop after flop after flop after flop. Oh my, what good did they produce? Hell, even the games that they maintain aren't good. Look at Six Siege, for example. That's a dumpster fire. In 2023, their open-world Avatar game went on sale for 40% off only 12 days after it was released due to sales falling way below the expected mark. Very early into 2024, Ubisoft had their corporate head so far up their own ass that we got some new gaming lingo that I didn't even expect to see this decade. I mean, hell, if I wanted to off myself, I'd jump from Ubisoft's ego to their total sales, and I can guarantee you that'd be a certified... You can cue the applause track, and you have permission to laugh now, I beg of you. They released Skull and Bones with the title of being the first quadruple A game for a good old $70. Everyone was quick to discover that this game wasn't worth half of that, because it was a pirate plundering game that didn't involve any sort of boarding or really any actual plundering. And when you take a deeper look at it, games made even a full decade ago had better immersive pirate experiences than this game did. Lumping in two games at once here for a 2-for-1 combo meal deal, Ubisoft had to cancel Tom Clancy's The Division Heartland to move resources to other games such as Rainbow Six and X-Defiant, which Ubisoft also canceled after saying that they wouldn't cancel it, so I sincerely hope that those resources were well moved, because I don't know where they went if X-Defiant died. Star Wars Outlaws sold 1 million copies in a month, which kinda sounds good, because 1 million is a lot, and a month in the grand scheme of things is relatively short, but compared to other games making 5, 10, even 20 times those sales in the same or even less time, and essentially given the $200 to $300 million budget for another $70 game, we're looking at a $70 million return, ignoring refunds and the purchasing of greater versions. Taking all this into account means that they didn't even come close to making back half of what they invested into this game. Plus, given how poorly Star Wars as a franchise has been doing in the cinematic side of things, I'm not sure people were excited for any more slop wars. Prince of Persia: Lost Crown came with both disappointing sales and the disbandment of the team behind it. The game itself wasn't even that bad of a game, but it just didn't meet Ubisoft's expectations in an already downward trend. Additionally, the remake of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time was delayed until at least 2026 following its poorly received trailer. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is a game in development under Ubisoft, with the first game releasing in 2003, and the second game was announced at Ubi Days in 2008, and then re-announced at Ubisoft's E3 2017 conference, and then a very confidence-restoring Twix post reminded everybody of their existence, with still no release window in sight. And now, of course, we reach Assassin's Creed Shadows. We went over Star Wars Outlaws already and how it was a $70 base game with other versions you could purchase, one or some reaching over $100. So, of course, that was the same deal with Assassin's Creed Shadows here. But when they released the announcement trailer of the game, they showed the 4 different editions that you could pre-purchase the game with before there was any actual gameplay footage. So they were essentially trying to milk people's wallets before people even knew what the game itself even looked like. If you pre-ordered the base game for the same whopping $70 price tag, you'd at the very least get a pre-order bonus mission, but that equates to essentially paywalling some gameplay from anybody who doesn't pre-order this mystery game. But you know, that's just the base pre-ordering thing that you could do for just $70, so your luck runs dry there if you're not willing to hand over any more than $70 for a game that you don't even know what it's going to turn out to be. You could also choose to spend either $110 or $130 for the Gold Edition or Ultimate Edition, respectively. Both of these editions included the opportunity to gain 3 days early access, which equated to you pay at least $40 extra or you don't get to play the game upon release, as well as a season pass. And the only difference between the Ultimate Edition and the Gold Edition, other than the $20 difference, was getting a few extra cosmetics and perks, resources, in-game items, whatever it even is. I don't know and I don't care. Essentially just pay to win items in a single player game. Assassin's Creed Shadows had an initial release date of November 15th, but ended up being delayed to February 14th of this year, and Unfortunately, it was around that time that Ubisoft decided to remove both the 3-day early access and the season pass out of the Gold and Ultimate editions, which was sort of the first sign to people that Ubisoft was really, really struggling due to how 2024 had gone. Now, if you think I'm about to get into the nitty-gritty about the historical inaccuracy about this game, then you can leave the room now. This is a video game. It is for fun. It doesn't need to be completely dead accurate to all of the history textbooks and whatever you learned in your history major or whatever. We're having fun here. The black samurai looks awesome. Whatever. The main gripe I'm focusing on here is how a lot of things just came off as insanely culturally insensitive. That is the point I want to focus on here. The insensitive part I'm getting at was the merch they tried to push out, starring the one-legged Torii Gate, for $70 as well, which, if you don't know, is the result from the bombing of Nagasaki. This took place all before the second delay of the game, now being pushed back to March 20th, which, taken out of context, I think people have come to terms at this point that delaying a game or movie isn't immediately a bad thing, as just about any of us would rather play a well-refined and polished version of our most anticipated games. However, in the scope of Ubisoft's turmoil, given their horrible past year and this being the second delay, it really doesn't look super hot. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit dark, so viewer discretion advised, I guess, a little bit. I know I'm not the most well-refined on the entirety of Japanese culture and history and such, so I don't know how huge of an impact this is to them, but a lot of people were pointing out, seeing how the game got pushed back to March 20th, is either insanely unfortunate on them or just insanely ignorant of them to do, because as we know, Assassin's Creed Shadows takes place in Japan, and March 20th is, unfortunately, the anniversary of Tokyo's subway sarin incident. On March 20th, 1995, a cult movement known as Aum Shinrikyo released sarin gas in 3 lines of the Tokyo Metro over 5 separate attacks during rush hour. These lines were targeted against trains passing through the Tokyo districts of Kosamakaseki and Nagatacho. My apologies if I've mispronounced any of these. And these attacks and the use of sarin resulted in 13 initial deaths, severely injuring 50 more, to which some later died, and causing temporary vision issues for about 1,000 others. Sarin, or GB, or isopropyl methylfluoridate, is a very potent nerve agent with symptoms including, but not limited to, blurry vision, diarrhea and involuntary excretion, nausea, vomiting, cramps, shortness of breath, increased salivation and lacrimation, seizures, and death. Aside from this, Aum Shinrikyo was also responsible for another terrorist attack 9 months prior to the subway sarin incident, and carried out several assassinations with the use of sarin. And sarin wasn't the only nerve agent that Aum Shinrikyo tampered with. They managed to produce all sorts of other nerve agents that were even stronger than sarin, one of them being VX, an extremely toxic and extremely deadly synthetic chemical compound that only requires exposure to tens of milligrams via inhalation or absorption through the skin to kill someone. Now, I know Ubisoft, this French gaming studio, is not going to know the entire history of Japan, because I myself especially have never heard of this incident up until this point. But still, given the already somewhat controversial points of Assassin's Creed Shadows, it just makes the entire scene look way worse. And with all of that, here we are. The game is out. There's mixed reviews amongst people and the game critics and all of that. While the game itself looks stunning, other things reveal some interesting AI. Of course, it's important to mention that this game also includes microtransactions, so regardless of if you paid $70 or $130, you can still make more purchases in a single-player game. So, do with that what you will. You thought that was it from Ubisoft, didn't you? But no, they released 2, not 1, 2 NFT games in 2024. You know, those little silly things you can buy and they have PNGs that have value. They made games out of those, I guess, after they died a couple of years ago. Now, I'm not even going to try to memorize these names because they are ridiculous and stupid and got no traction that I don't think anyone can even recite them by name, so Champions Tactics Grimoria Chronicles, which looks like something a 13-year-old made as their first little project for computer class in middle school, and Captain Laserhawk the Game, which features Rayman, where you buy a little pixelated Plinko character and you fight with it. I don't know. You pay like $18 for a character or something, and then you go play on a little pixelated or 3D feel. I don't even know. It looks like it runs worse than Doom on a potato. Thought it was worth bringing up those two things because everyone loves a little bit of extra seasoning on top of the main course or the finishing dessert or whatever it may be. So with that, you could say Ubisoft is both out of touch and out of time. Here is a freaking mess. Obviously, honorable mentions. I think that there's been a whole lot of examples that we could draw from, and it would be a little unfair not to at least dive into a few extra little tidbits here and there. But given how many games there are and how many catastrophes have taken place, we'd be here all day if I weren't to just summarize some of the best points that I could grab, at least in my opinion. So if I don't touch on your favorite game, or least favorite at that matter, I apologize. There's too much to do. Plus, I'm sure someone else out there has done a more in-depth video on your favorite choice. And yes, I'm going to touch on it a little bit, but Valorant, no, not because I'm bad at the game, which we already know that, but because it's still evident the game is starting to fall off a little bit. I'm still touching on it a little bit because I watched one video of just how the skins have become more overpriced as time goes on, and the quality of said skins are deteriorating as said time goes on. Both with that, and how Valorant is trying to keep a more competitive tendency here. So focusing a whole lot on the best teams, which kind of has led the game to not be updated as much, kind of. But like even so, like now there's still agents and some maps being pumped in here and there, but even so, it's getting real dry. Unfortunately, after watching that one video, as YouTube likes to do, my entire recommended feed was now flooded with similar videos and such of the same topic, so I thought it'd be fair to at least include a tiny section of it, just because several people have pointed it out, so clearly it's a good enough talking point. Basically, like I said, the main criticism is just more and more skin bundles being released at a higher and higher price each time, with lower quality to those skins. So they're testing waters to see, what can we get away with? Can we make this garbage skin and just pump it up to $79 for the full bundle? Yeah, I think we can. They'll eat that up. As well as implementing some nice gameplay features such as a replay system that has been requested for years now, and I think is in the works now. Again, I don't play the game anymore because I'm bad. But at the same time, it's also a system that other games like Overwatch and Marvel Rivals and other games have. Now, I can't just say that because I know games like that compared to Valorant are completely different. They are coded way differently, first and foremost, and they are just entirely different games and operate completely differently from each other. The most similar thing that they have is that characters do different things. But at the same time with all this, they go and try to introduce even more cosmetics such as flexes, which from what I've seen in the video that I watched, they put that in as part of the bundle they're trying to sell with it, and that drastically inflates the price. And getting as technical as possible to make sure that people will buy both melees and flexes by making it so that holding a flex doesn't make you run as fast as holding a knife, because if you did go as fast, then you'd have no reason to buy more melees if you have a favorite flex. So smart, I guess, but and like I said before, it kind of seems to some people that they focus more on putting more skins in the game based off how many new unique skin sets have been pumped out over recent years compared to how many new maps and agents and overall features get added. Which I'm not saying that they don't update their game. Like they still include a few new things like a new gun, new shield variant, new agents have been coming out. But even my best friend Aiden, who plays this game for scholarships at his college of his choosing, has been growing quite bored of the game, so I think that kind of says something. And I've talked to Aiden about this stuff too, since he is Ascendant. He's played the game a lot and knows a lot about the game and how to actually play it, so if anyone's to do the talking about how the game's trajectory is, it's more likely to be him, and I'm sure that he will most likely beat my ass up in the DMs over anything that seems anything vaguely wrong about the game itself and what I've said about it. It still wouldn't be fair if I don't include some of these points I'm about to bring up, because given how enthusiastic he gets whenever there's a hint that I might play the game with him, I owe it to him a little bit to give the game a little bit of justice. The game itself, at least in the highest lobbies where people know how to actually play the game, is actually quite balanced. There's not a huge meta or anything where agents are best to pick in any scenario, because they've kind of got the game figured out, which is what you want in a game. So sure, maybe some agents will be more dominant in lower lobbies, but that's because people don't know how to play the game fully. And of course, different agents will always be better on different maps. That's also why it's a little more difficult to just push out more and more new maps and agents, because it can be as easy as that to find a super easy and super powerful lineup or combo with X agents in X spots on this and that map. They need time to implement each agent at a time and each map at a time to ensure that said agent isn't an absolute powerhouse and plows through everybody no matter what, and to make sure a map isn't too one-sided. At the end of the day, I'm sure it's not the most thrilling to see a new skin pumped out, though, where you can throw another $90 at for the full bundle, or at the very least $60 for the new melee, or however much it is now. Or, say, a pistol for your favorite VCT team that costs double, because half the money goes to them, or whatever it is, I don't know. Still a lot. Or even a super expensive VCT melee or Phantom or Vandal that costs double, because those proceeds go to the actual tournament or such, or whatever it may be. That's still a lot for a skin that's probably not worth that much. Shifting away from a singular game, moving on to a full company again, because frankly I don't want to research League of Legends of all games just to fit that into a Riot Games section. We'll hit up Warner Bros, who had some absolute bangers such as Kill the Justice League and Multiverses. Kill the Justice League was a live service game that half the time I didn't even realize was a live service game. It wasn't great, and the ending was just extremely comical. A classic everyone lived happily ever after sort of ending, except it's insanely out of place given the game's plot, and also everyone doesn't live happily ever after, considering someone is dead, and probably not happy about it either. And would you look at that? This is yet another game to feature a, what is that, $200 million loss? Huh, who would have guessed? And then there's Multiverses, a game gaining an incredible and rare achievement of dying twice. The game had an initial beta launch and was actually fairly decent. Then it got taken down to be worked on for about a year or so just to be re-released, and oh man, who would have seen this coming? Everything was a downgrade. Many basic quality of life things were removed, and they had this weird system where you could only select a few heroes to play from each week unless you forked over some extra cash from your pocket. At least I'm pretty sure that's what it was. If not, please refresh me. I played it with Aiden for like a week when it first dropped, but then just kind of dropped it like 99% of the rest of the player base did. Now, this game had actually been in the news a couple times, at least the gaming news or whatever you want to call it, and I actually owe this one to my therapist since he actually plays this game a whole heckin' ton. But Bungie's mistreatment of Destiny 2 of all games is stunning to witness, considering how that's the only thing they really have holding them up right now. Bungie unfortunately followed the trend of having to lay off hundreds of employees, a trend that I'll revisit shortly, and it's incredibly unfortunate to say that, given how the thing that doesn't line up most is the CEO's priorities and money management. $2.3 million is a lot of money. A mere fraction to the budget of some of these games from other studios, but an aspect of being distributed amongst employees, it's still a lot to give out. While it isn't enough to completely pay the 200 plus yearly salaries from the laid off employees, it's certainly enough to help ensure that the layoffs weren't so severe, if not completely preventable. Because surely there are better uses for $2.3 million than classic car auctions. Now, you can defend the greedy corporate overlords all you want, because yes, I do still understand the point of it's his money, he can do what he wants with it. But if a CEO really cares about the company he is the CEO over, realistically he'd be fighting tooth and nail to ensure his games are kept up on and has a safe work environment with no real risk of failing. Oh, I guess I wrote a big script about how CEOs and companies don't do that. Huh. Now, remember how I said that it took me a while to even finish the script and how things kept on changing in all the games and studios and stuff, and just overall way too much happening all at once? Do you also remember how I mentioned that it would take a lot to somehow beat Concord's level of failure? Anyways, yeah, it was recently brought to my attention, at least when I wrote this script, that there has already been a game competing with Concord for worst launch, this being Unknown 9. The most noticeable achievement, failing to surpass even Golem's peak player count by only reaching 285. Now, this was another game that had a budget of over $100 million, which doesn't quite compare to the $400 million of Concord, but it sure looks like a game that Ubisoft would label as a quadruple A game. Concord obviously had some major plans behind it, since everyone behind the scenes was praising it like some holy grail of modern day video games, but Unknown 9 had just as many plans, if not even more, that they had to shut down after its launch. We're talking more video games, a film, books, comics, web series, and even podcasts, according to Gamer Rant, which of course is now all cancelled because the game was garbage. Hey yo, me intruding again. I just wanted to butt in one more time because I don't know if everyone fully understands the level of failure this game is. Like, this is truly about as significant of a failure as Concord was. Not only did this achieve a fraction of the peak player count, but there was one report that I read that someone higher up in GameStop was able to look into all of the sales and stuff for Unknown 9 Awakening. And of course, as most gaming stores do, they require a certain amount of each title to be sent to stores in case people want to buy them off the shelf. And while they were looking, they could see that there were about like 50 pre-orders or so, and that there were 0 sales off the shelf for this game. No additional people went in and bought this game off the shelf. That's how catastrophic of a failure this game was. That no one was willing to go into a store and look at it and even buy it off the shelf. I certainly did not understand the extent of this game's failure, and I know that Concord is quite the big one since it's the one that kind of did it first, so anything even close along the lines of Concord kind of got swept under the rug. Or maybe that's just quite telling, considering that this game had such a poor launch that no one even noticed or remembered the fact that this game released at all. So, either that's the greatest love poem we'll ever hear, or that is just a whole new layer of irony. And now, it almost feels a little incomplete if I don't at least give a little credit to EA, a company's greed that walked so that all the others could run. Obviously, they haven't been doing well either, considering they too like to butcher their own games for reasons far beyond my understanding. Plants vs. Zombies is a classic, but PvC 2 was just littered with microtransactions and play-to-win plants and pop-ups and extras, and holy there is way too much here for a game about Flora beefing with the undead. Apex Legends was tied to a clothesline overnight and simply forgotten about unless there's some other way to pump out more insanely overpriced cosmetics that make the Valorant or Overwatch price inflations look generous. And finally, Dragon Age The Veilguard wasn't something I was initially going to talk about, but seeing how news has come out about EA suffering was really the deal breaker here. I haven't heard any good about it, and it sounds like it forces you as the player to follow a certain character path with no real variation to it, which is like the entire core of the Dragon Age games from what I've heard. Since it's a game genre where you are normally meant to be able to build your own reputation, whether that be for better or for worse, and now you're stuck into appealing to everybody and you really aren't even playing the game for yourself anymore. Sales for the game just weren't good, and so the common trend of laying people off followed, which is a funny reminder because I'm about to dive a little deeper into some of the other popular trends as well. As everything, this really just scratches the surface of everything we've seen unfold over the past few years. There have been plenty of other terrible trends to come from a lot of these deplorable games, like studios getting shut down, which also doesn't always need to be the f***ing case if you're Xbox, I guess. Xbox in this day and age is most likely to shut down an entire studio than they are to churn out a single game. And again, studios under Xbox can be flourishing, like Tango Gameworks, who developed Hi-Fi Rush, a game deserving of much more praise than received. But then after shutting down studios like Tango Gameworks and several others, they have the audacity to announce that they're going to be using generative AI in their games. So, they essentially punch developers in the dick, knee them in the nose as they contort from the initial pain, and then kick their writhing bodies with a cheeky grin, viewing them as liabilities and expendables since paying more people means less money in the higher-ups' pockets. But then even if an entire studio isn't shut down from some catastrophic failure, you're sitting at a good 80% chance that some mass layoffs are to follow. Hell, even Unity needed to turn in the spotlight, where back in 2023 they decided that their fee structure would be based on the amount of installs, which could easily be exploited in their favor. At the time this all went down, the CEO, John Riccitiello, or however you say it, an ex-EA CEO who was too greedy for EA standards, the one who petitioned for players to pay a crisp buck in order to reload a f***ing gun in the middle of a shooter game, had gone ahead and sold a bunch of his stocks a few days prior. Fortunately, at the very least, he left the company a few weeks after that. Unfortunately, with all the money he just made, and even more unfortunately, with the huge round of layoffs. And on top of just lousy management and awful game releases, a lot of it always comes down to corporate greed. Another notorious greedy decision we all saw last year was the initial announcement of Escape from Tarkov's PvE DLC game mode with a price point of, well, do you guys want to guess how much? Go ahead, make your choices now. Did you pick A and D? Because that would be correct. A whopping $250 price tag for both a shitty DLC and pay-to-win bonuses. Some players spent $100 on the Edge of Darkness edition of the game, which stated all players would receive all upcoming DLCs for free if they purchased that version of the game, just for it to be spun around on them, and they're only given a 6-month free trial to this game mode. Battlestate Games went and said that the PvE was a new feature and game mode, which is true, but decided to use those terms to justify how that it isn't DLC, and that DLC is just additional downloadable content. So I'll just let you all sit on that one for a moment. In retrospect, BSG basically scams, lies, and misleads their player base, double downs on some of the worst takes in gaming known to man, and creates incredibly hollow excuses. They at the very least stated that they'd give the game mode, DLC, to EOD holders for free, but still keep the $250 price tag as an option with more balanced rewards, but also including more rewards for this single player experience. Why do you need pay-to-win items in a single-player experience? I don't know how that's all played out and where it's sitting at today, because I haven't kept up on this game, nor have I ever. But it was still a shitty tactic they tried to pull, and we got to witness, so that definitely makes this list. To wrap up this sweet treat of all things negative, I'd love to remind you that it's all your fault. According to the game studios, of course. The most pitiful, embarrassing, and honestly hilarious trend to emerge from this era of flops is when a company goes and blames the players, the consumers, their customers, that they're the reason why their games have failed. A company releases a game, and immediately that company is seeing lower than expected numbers from the game. So they go and pander to the community and say that we should be giving these games a shot. Buy our game, come play it for a while, preferably enough to exceed the refund deadline. Come see that our turd that we've just pushed out is at the very least polished, only for the community to respond by leaving the company on red, not buying into pathetic company pandering, which then leads to the company to instigate against the people and say, this is your fault, you failed the game. When you go and add it all together, it really paints a disgusting image. A major company produces slop, in some instances forcing a smaller studio to produce said slop, resulting in terrible numbers. Due to this, the people up on top, who watch studios under them, get disbanded. The same people who watch entire teams under them get cut in half as mass layoffs follow the company's failure. Those douchebags have the gall to speak loud and proud how the consequences are the consumer's fault. It is genuinely f***ing disgusting that this is the state of AAA studio games. But despite all of this corporate greed and doomer talk, we still have hope. We get to turn to a brighter side in the gaming market, as there are many games leading the charge for a better future. Nearly all of these AAA studios are suffering due to such large drops in sales, so it's with no doubt that we will start seeing some better changes soon. If you've made it this far into the video, congratulations. I want to let you know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and all of these negatives of AAA studios is, for the most part, behind us. A lot of this was also just to be a fun little rant so that all of us can reflect on all that's happened within really just the past few years. A way to let us look and point and laugh at these studios for making an immaculate mockery of themselves at the expense of their reputation and hundreds of millions of dollars. And like I said in the beginning of this, all of this is to showcase how I think we're about to see a major shift in trends in the gaming market. Many indie games prove to provide a more worthwhile experience at just a fraction of the price that a lot of these studios charge for their big title games. It also goes to show that graphics aren't always everything. I think the biggest conception in some studios is that the realistic graphics means the game is better. We see a lot of games that strive to push out top quality graphics and reach quadruple A status, and then the game comes out more bland than a video compilation of paint drying on different surfaces. But a lot of smaller games go and prove that any style of graphics work. Heck, the more creative people get with it, the better. Looking at Lethal Company and Repo, of course, they're both very low poly. However, the style of it is still extremely entertaining, and the ragdolly nature of your characters are infinitely more entertaining than any death you'll really get out of a AAA title. Many indie games are able to really captivate a unique or just simply fun experience with some new twist or addition, all while placed on some new setting that really gets the community engaged. Buckshot Roulette has a dark and bloody atmosphere with killer beats and just a fun, simple game for a cheap price. Now with a free multiplayer game mode that isn't behind an additional price tag of $250 and considered not DLC. One game that I got into and played through is Terra Memoria, an indie turn-based RPG game with adorable pixel sprites in a vibrant 3D world. Not to mention the amount of detail and polish that was put into this game, my personal favorite being the way elements work in the game. Each attack is assigned some sort of element, and when you attack, the special effects have the respective color of the element. But one character alters the elements of these attacks, and in doing so, the color of the special effects change as well, which I know is a very tiny detail, but I just genuinely love and appreciate that small touch. Web fishing took off as this very casual, fun, relaxing, and astoundingly adorable little fishing game to really unwind while playing. And to completely contrast that, horror experiences are also major selling points in the indie genre. Games like Phasmophobia, and a bountiful selection of games themed around the backrooms and other liminal spaces. Indie games really manage to capture just about any feeling or experience while also keeping a level of humor because, come on, you're playing with your best friends, of course you're going to send somebody to test the waters, or even do it yourself. Now, it wouldn't be fair to say that it's indie games doing all of the work. There are still some examples that we've seen that I think these larger studios should really take notes on so they can stop sucking and start earning back some of their major losses. Helldivers II, of course, got its redemption arc, and is a smaller live service game that actually does significantly well. Only $40 for a game receiving new updates and patches to keep the game strong. While they do have a few small microtransactions in the game, at the very, very least, they aren't super predatory and are incredibly cheap. Yes, I know microtransactions on top of a $40 price tag sucks regardless, but I think we can take more good from this than bad. Now, I know I've already mentioned it a lot, but it is literally one of the most recent and one of the best examples to draw from at the moment. Regardless, Marvel Rivals has really risen up at an insane pace, maintained very strong numbers, isn't predatory with their free-to-play with Battle Pass and microtransaction skin structure, and has successfully dethroned Overwatch because it's an actually engaging and super fun game. Of course, I wrote that part before Overwatch started to step up, so if Overwatch 2 is actually fun again, then go have fun with that, but Marvel Rivals is where I'm going to stay. If this genre of game isn't your cup of tea, I understand. However, this game truly, and I mean truly, makes you feel powerful no matter who you're playing. This game rewards skill and knows how to balance characters quite well, and even if you're going against someone who can counter your hero pretty well, if you've got the skill to outplay them, you will be handsomely rewarded. Now, I know there are still some of those people who want to nitpick at Marvel Rivals for copying Overwatch, but they really don't want to start having the conversation with Overwatch building off of Team Fortress 2, or hell, copying off of Paladins. I forget Paladins exists, and I loved Kiriko when she came out because she was right up my alley character-wise, but man, she looks awfully similar to a Paladin hero who came out well before her. Like, come on, that's like die-hard Pokemon fans complaining that some of the designs in Power World were straight rip-offs from some of the Pokemon designs, but they don't want to say anything when looking back and seeing how Pokemon in the very, very, very early days copied some designs from other rivaling companies. However, this can all be excused across the board because in a game with so many different abilities, you're going to see some overlap. No game gets to hold the right to a particular game mechanic or style or ability or whatever, Nintendo, Warner Bros. And there's really only so much you can do with a sniper's kit and keep them in line with the rest of the cast. People even nitpick at the Chinese New Year event being super similar to Overwatch's, which, okay, sure, but hang on. NetEase is a Chinese company and has already been memed about having Chinese censorship, but not to mention they used to help work with Activision Blizzard on Overwatch. So of course there's going to be some overlap here and there, given how this isn't NetEase's first rodeo. And besides, this game was made to directly compete with Overwatch. Fortnite, PUBG, and Warzone compete in the Battle Royale genre. Valorant and CSGO compete in the 5v5 attack vs defense genre. And unlike a lot of the other new shooter-based games that directly compete with one of these games or another, Marvel Rivals hasn't fallen off. It's fun, and it's addicting, and it's worth your time. Also, to anyone saying that this game is a gooner game, sure, maybe there's some sexy fits going on here, but that's also plain and simply a major appeal to a large sum of people. And this game doesn't even compare to whatever the is going on in Zenless Zone Zero, so I will not hear it. Every time I'm unfortunate enough to get a reel about some trailer of a new character for their shitty gacha game or whatever, 9 times out of 10 it's for some female with more recoil than the fucking Negev from CSGO. So, it's clear as day that no matter what genre of game we're talking about, there's always potential for greatness. It's a complete and utter shame that many companies have decided to throw away their priorities and decide that draining everyone's wallets is better than actually satisfying their customers. It really just goes to show how much they've absolutely lost the ball, and unfortunately, many people in many different positions end up paying the big price, which is their jobs. But it's really opened the door for a lot of people to step up and take advantage of this sinking AAA or quadruple A ship. If what we've seen, and pretty much just 2024 alone, but also a few years ahead of that, behind that, if all of that isn't enough to persuade companies that they should be locking in and stepping up and really like caring about their games and trying to make them good for everybody, then I don't know what will. If they're going to sit down and continue to try to find as many ways as possible just to earn a small extra buck at the cost of literally the game itself or the studios behind the games, then at that point, we just gotta hope the company burns. Because if the consumer's satisfaction is not the ~1 priority, then why should I be bothered to purchase a game? Why should I be bothered to fork over $70, $90, $100, $130 for exclusive things or a better version of the game if I'm not even in the mind of the people who are developing this game, or at least managing this game being built? We've seen a lot of IPs getting tarnished with these companies testing the waters and seeing what they can get away with and how much money they can make out of games through really, really predatory actions and stuff. But as you can see, they think we're just going to keep falling for it, and we're not. We're sick of it. I say this with utmost sincerity. Thank you for seeing this video through to this point. I really appreciate it. I mean, really, really appreciate it. I'm sure you and I are in the same boat in one way or another, and trust me, I would love to read more about your frustrations in the comments. That'd be awesome. I would love to. Biggest frustrations, biggest letdowns, favorite indie games, least favorite indie games. Tell me. I want to hear about it. I want to see what other people are thinking. If I've been hitting the mark on this one, or if I'm way far off in some instances, please enlighten me. And again, I apologize if I didn't get to your favorite fumble of last year or your favorite indie game that's come out in the past couple of years. I'm sure you understand that with the hundreds and hundreds of titles that get released, that if I were to try to be as descriptive with every single game that even really fits this list in one way or another, I would have an entire running series of just that, and it would get old pretty quickly. Like I've said before, just seeing everything that went down in 2024 is enough to cover way more than I already did in this video alone. Maybe I got a little carried away with ranting on all the flops and stuff about games, because Doomer Talk does get more clicks, I guess, but at the same time, it's kind of fun to look back and see this, most of this happened in 1 year, for Ubisoft especially. Like, that is a lot to happen and to witness in 1 year, where about every other week you were seeing some new title bomb, or some company in some kind of chutzpah, or doing some crazy executive plan that's not going to work out or bring good press to them. But any press is good press, so what am I to know? I'm just the consumer. But it all boils back the companies realizing that they have to do better. And I think we're going to start seeing companies do better, because we have seen too much bomb in too short of a time for this to last. They can't keep getting away with this. Like, there is no feasible way where this is going to be good, where every single title, every single AAA title is upwards of $200 to a $400 million loss. That's not good for any company. I don't care how rich they are. We want to see our favorite games come out as good, and we want to have them, and we want to enjoy them. We want them, for Pete's sake. Like, we just want to have these games in the first place. Your favorite remaster of your favorite game, or an awesome sequel to your favorite game, or whatever it may be. Like, we want these to happen, and we want them to be good. We don't want to feel like we are pressured to give as much money as possible in the smallest, tiniest little things. We don't want to have to pay in the game that we already had to pay for just to play more of the game, because the crucial aspects of the game are locked behind a second paywall that's just scummy and crummy and bad. As this video comes to a close, I once again thank you for being here, watching this. Do tell me what your favorite upcoming game will be in 2025. There's already a lot that we can expect to see. I, for one, am very excited for Metal Eden or whatever, made by the same company who made Ruiner, which is another indie game that I am a huge fan of. I love it to death, and I would recommend you play it. And make sure you subscribe for whatever it is I do. I mostly do gaming videos, sometimes some random fun video that I feel like doing with friends. Every once in a while I push out another video essay kind of like this one, so if any of that is what you're into, then go ahead, subscribe. I'll appreciate it. Okay, so much for a happy ending. As you can see, I got a haircut. That's about the only good thing going on with this added section. Don't have the energy to make my bed right now because it's too depressing. Don't have my guys set up, so kind of a bummer, I guess. As you can see, you already know what this is about. We can all blame Nintendo for a not so happy ending to this video. I said we were going to see some changes. I wasn't expecting immediate worse changes before I even got this out. But yeah, $80 Nintendo games, because they can get away with it, and they will. Companies will follow suit. $90 physical copies that don't actually have a physical copy of the game in it. They just give you, as Charlie put it, a permission slip to download the game from the internet. The old glorious Ubisoft quote of "we should get comfortable not owning anything" is being hardcore reinforced by not only a bigger price tag, but also just the stamp of Nintendo's logo on it, as we now can pay $80 or up to $90 for games that we don't actually physically own and can be removed from us at any point in time that they want. Things looked great, but holy crap, I'm at a loss for words. I genuinely am. I haven't bought Monster Hunter Wilds yet because it's $70, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll wait for it to go on sale and then I'll get it at that point, because that game seems pretty fun now that Dauntless is gone. And now we're shooting up to $80 already, so don't really know what's gonna happen. Sorry this ending wasn't as happy as you wanted it to be, because I had an ending planned out with bloopers from my sessions to lighten the mood a little bit, even more, but Nintendo had to go and swoop in before I finished all this and make sure that they actually put a spot in my video. So there you go. Now they do, and now the ending's not so happy because this really, really sucks. So subscribe.